Okay, so this is the second. Oh, hang on, I missed a light. This is the second developer blog for Democracy 4, the political strategy game being made by Positech Games, and the first one was like a very sort of quick. Well, not that quick actually. It was like an introduction to, hey, we're making the game, and this is basically what it looks like. I'm going to show you a bit more of that this time, but also I thought. It always makes sense, I think, to have some sort of theme if you're going to do a video like this. So the theme I'm going to go with is kind of what I am thinking about not putting in and my arguments for why not to put them in, so that you wonderful players can tell me why I am wrong. So we did this first video, we got a lot of feedback, and some of it is feedback that we've had before on earlier versions of the game, and some of it is new. And I thought I'd talk about the kind of attitude we have to what goes in the game and what does not go in the game. So there's a whole bunch of things. So the first thing I'm going to talk about that I haven't specifically got feedback on yet, but I thought I'd mention it because at some point some person will go, hey, wait a minute. Is the voter groups and who isn't in there. So this is the list of all the voter groups, and we have young people, ethnic minorities, parents, blah blah blah. Women is not a group. They're not a voter group. They're not a distinct voter group. Obviously, like, there are women in the game. I mean, like, hey, there's one. There's another one. There's another one. You know, there are women in the game. But they're not modelled independently. And why is this? Well, we model like commuters, but we don't model women. Surely this is awful. The reason for it is what you need to have a voter group in the game to make the game interesting and fun and to work from a point of view of game design is you need to have a distinct group of people. Okay, that's fine. We know, you know, how many women there are, etc. And they have to have policies that affect them, specific things that affect them more so than they affect other people. And of course we have that in terms of like abortion and equal pay and stuff like that. And also you have to have the policies that affect them not be already included within other groups, and for it to be universally applicable. So for example, if you look at motorists, right, there are a few environmental motorists like myself, but that's kind of already modelled. But generally speaking, if you double the amount of tax that car owners pay, motorists will be upset. So you can put that in an equation, okay? But let's say, for example, we kind of change the law on abortion to make abortion harder to get. A lot of people would instinctively say that would anger women, but it wouldn't anger conservative women. And the thing is, would it only anger women? No, it would anger liberals as well. And a lot of the issues that come up where people say you need women as a group in the game because you need to include this issue, they tend to be issues on the liberal conservative spectrum. So you get a lot of men arguing for equal pay for women. You get a lot of men defending the sort of right to choose. That's the right phrase, isn't it? We don't use those phrases in the UK. So anyway, so it's actually a lot of those issues are in the game, but they are on the liberal conservative spectrum. It's not specific to women, which is why they're not a group. Now we could include them as a group anyway, but the thing is, there is a kind of extra cognitive load, in other words complexity, every time you add something to the game that can scare people off. So we could add people with beards to the game. You know, we could add everything. We could add people who like hip hop. We could add short people, tall people, whatever, overweight people, ambitious. You know, there are so many attributes you know, about people. We could add voter groups forever, but it would just make the game too complicated. Now, something that has come up since we did the video is a lot of people talking about population growth. Why do you not model population growth? Why do you not model you know, the kind of that sort of demographic. We want to see the impact that our policies have on population growth. Now, we currently don't, and I don't know whether we will or not, but there are basically two ways of doing this internally in the simulation of the game. So the simplest way to do it is to have a variable like this, like car usage, and that would be population size, and we could then have things affecting that and that affecting other things. The other way to do it internally is to actually create more simulated voters as the population goes up, and to actually kill them as they get older. I'm quite tempted to do that anyway, but there is a problem with that, which you only learn when you've done a load of simulation games, especially complicated ones. Is although like it would be technically very easy for me to write code, well, not that easy actually, to write code that ages everyone in the game a year each year, and then sort of works out, you know, given various variables that are affecting elderly people and whether or not their heating is expensive, and if we have extreme weather, and the, you know, whether or not they're in poverty. You could look at each individual voter in the game, and you could go, we're killing that one off through disease or whatever. Maybe if the healthcare is not that high, you kill them off. And then you could also model the birth rate, and you could say create a new human, whatever. Although you would then have to wait 16 years, which is, you know, quite a long time in the game, for them to be able to vote. So they're kind of irrelevant to some extent until they can vote, because then they don't show up here because they can't vote, right? But what we could do, I guess, is declare individual entities, individual voters in the game would become parents, and they would fade out of parenthood as they age and stuff like that. Like, we could do all that, we could code all that, and we could write very long, complicated blog posts about how clever we were and how technical it is. But the thing is there is that the programmer is having loads of fun, and so is the CPU. But is the player having any fun? In other words, would you even notice? Now, we can simulate that in other ways, simply like by having one of these, for example. We can simulate that, and it makes pretty much no difference, right? So, for example, when car usage goes up in the game, goes up in the game. Whoop-de-doo. We don't have to go through each individual voter, although we kind of do this actually, and decide whether or not they become a motorist. Actually, we do that. It works automatically, as it were. But we don't have to like explicitly rub the player's kind of like face in it and go, look, Bob has just bought a car or whatever, because you're talking about millions of people who are attempting to simulate. So it's all being done in kind of like a grand scheme of things. So we could model population in kind of like the abstract way. Now, the other question when it comes to population is why bother, right? So let's say the population goes up. What's the actual impact? I mean, okay, the population of the UK goes up, so that would mean that, I guess, house prices would go up. Assuming that you don't have a huge black market, which is something that we would normally model anyway, then the tax take would go up, but so would all of the public spending commitments. So, if you're subsidising rail and the population doubles, you need to subsidise twice as many trains for the same effect, but you bring in twice as much tax, so it doesn't matter. And in many ways, a higher population would be more efficient because it's easier to move people around and to cater to people in a high population density country than it is with a small one. Anyway, my point is, who cares? My point is, what difference does it make? Now, it does make a difference if there are more young people than old people, especially for paying for pensions. We kind of model that already. So I guess what I'm saying is kind of like, how is this different from just modeling immigration in many ways? Now, obviously, you have like a reproductive rate, and that has a big impact. But we already model the effect of immigration on GDP, and the effect of GDP on immigration. You can see that it flows both ways, and we model like the effect of immigration on like healthcare demand. Look, we've got more people coming into the country, so down here we have more healthcare demand. We're modeling all that already. So do we really need to model population? And we could do a load of tricks. We could make it look like we're modeling population when we're not. I'm just trying to be honest as a game designer and kind of say, the real question is, what do you want to see as a player, not how do you want the code to work, because the code probably works differently to the way you think anyway. So another thing that comes up a lot is parliamentary systems. Now we don't have a parliamentary system in the game. What we have is we have all of the voters and we have like cabinet ministers, and the way we kind of simulate this stuff is with political capital, this thing down here, and you see this icon that is all over the place here for political capital. If I want to do something controversial, like I want to change our policy on whether or not we teach creationism or evolution, I need political capital. So here I can lower it, but I can't raise it. So I can't exclusively teach evolution at the moment. If I try and do it, I'll get an error because I don't have enough political capital. So political capital is kind of the amount of influence, the amount of power you have. So if you are, for example, a US president and you don't control the House of Representatives or the Senate, you kind of don't have much political capital. You can get some stuff done, but not the really controversial stuff. And arguably, in the American system, you can't get anything done. In the British system, it's kind of horrendously complicated because we will have a prime minister, but the prime minister doesn't really have any power whatsoever. Basically, you have the House of Commons, and the prime minister is the person who can control a majority vote in the House of Commons, which normally means they are the leader of the party that won the election. But it's not quite as simple as that, because they can be in a coalition, which we now model. And so they have political power, they have political capital, depending on how big their majority is. So if they have a majority of 100 in the House of Commons in the UK, they can pretty much pass anything they want, because some of their MPs may argue and may vote against it, but you're not going to get 100 of them, or well, 50 of them, like voting against it. If you have a majority of 1, then that's really tough, and you can only really do stuff that isn't that controversial. And that is how we implement that in the game. So political capital is basically a measure of how many members of the House and the Senate are on your side, and it's basically your ability to get things done, right? Now, why do we not model a whole parliamentary system? Why do we not model the House of Representatives? Why do we not model the Senate? Why do we not model the House of Commons? The reason we don't do that is that there are more than 2 countries in the world. The UK works differently to the US. The US works differently to France. I think France has a president and a prime minister. I mean, how confusing. Germany has a chancellor, and Germany is in a state of perpetual coalition. And every country around the world has a different system. So, although, you know, I know a fair bit about US and UK politics, and I could model those two quite well. But firstly, it's an enormous cost on the game development, because you have to research the way all these other things work and implement different systems for every country, which would be enormously difficult. We could do it. The problem is then you have to learn all that in order to play the game, right? And when it comes down to it, what really matters is how much power do you have as the leader. Now, and you can have more or less power, and we're going to have a few new systems in this. For example, in coalitions, you will get a lot less power, and then you will be offered some power by your coalition partners each turn. They will sort of say, hey, well, we always wanted to boost police numbers. If you boost police numbers, have some political capital. In other words, you can then do something you want to do. So we are going to change it a little bit. But as to the question of like, why model that stuff, why model the individual parliamentary constituencies? People say, oh, but I want safe seats and I want marginal seats and stuff like that. And do you really? You might want it for your country, but you're only ever going to play one country. And then it becomes more of an election game rather than a game of elections and government. So it changes the focus of the game. I can be argued around on all of this, by the way. So the final thing that I want to point out is there's some stuff that is actually very important in politics, and especially in economics, that we do not model. And we don't model because it doesn't fit into the game in a very effective way. There's loads of things that people don't mention, and I'm surprised they don't mention. For example, private debt. Private debt is a big deal, and you'll know that if you're a student, or if you're young, or if you've got a big mortgage. We don't model that. And the main impact on how big a deal that is, and mortgages and stuff like that, would be interest rates. Now, we do model interest rates, but only on debt. We only model it on here it is in a horrible pink, on the debt that the government has, the interest rate that's charged on that debt. That is not the same. That's not the same thing. It often tracks it quite closely, but it is not the same thing. I'm talking about consumer debt levels and consumer interest rates that you would pay on a mortgage. We don't model that, and we don't model that because it's incredibly complicated, and I think not that interesting as a player into politics. If you're into economics, if like you're a degree level economics student, and I did my degree at London School of Economics, you would look at the economic simulation, you would go, well, where's interest rates? Interest rates are everything. Every graph you see in like a degree in economics it's got interest rates in. It's like the most complicated thing, and it's modelled in such a complicated way. And eventually, after doing a degree in economics, you come away actually less informed about interest rates than you were before, which is kind of interesting, because everyone thinks they got an opinion on interest rates. So it's like, oh, I pay too much, my mortgage interest rate should be lower. And then savers say, oh, there's no point in saving money, it's ridiculous, I thought I'd be able to live off my savings, interest rates should be higher. Everyone has an opinion on interest rates until you do a degree in economics, and then you think, oh my god, it's so complicated and so insane that all I know, to quote Socrates, is that I know nothing. Anyway, what I'm getting at is interest rates are really complicated, and we don't put it in because I don't think it's worth the extra complexity. It would just confuse and annoy everyone. Something else that we don't model, I think about modelling, but I can't find a way to do it that is effective, is business confidence. Now, business confidence is far more important than people think, because business confidence drives current investment. So, for example, if you think the economy is going to go really badly in the next few years, and you make washing machines in a factory, right? You will not invest in new equipment or another factory or a bigger factory or whatever. You won't invest because you think, well, in the future people aren't going to have any money, they're not going to buy washing machines. This is a huge big deal. Okay, business confidence is really important, which is why you hear politicians talking up the country and saying, this is the greatest country in the world, and our economy is amazing, and things are looking really good, and you people in the media might not think this, and everyone from like Trump to David Cameron to Clinton to everyone tries to convey a level of confidence about the future, economically speaking, which is very important from an economic point of view, because if you don't have that, you don't have investment. If you don't have investment, you don't have growth, and lots of things like kind of collapse if that doesn't happen. Our economic system really needs us to have business confidence. Now that can be a really bad thing, because if politicians can only talk positively about the economic future, then you can't handle things like climate change. In the US, you have a problem with the fact that the welfare budget, the social security budget, is unsustainable and is basically fueled by debt. And here in the UK, we have kind of a similar thing, in that we're always spending money that we don't have, and you can't admit that, because if you do, that leads to a crisis in business confidence. There's a whole thing in an episode of The West Wing where they come up with another word for recession, so that they don't say recession, because if anyone hears it, then the media starts saying, oh, I'm hearing the word recession mentioned in the White House, and then like everything collapses, you know. We don't model it. I need to shut up and stop talking. We don't model business confidence. And why not model it when it's really important? Okay. The problem is what does the player do? Like we have buttons. If you go into this stuff, there's various stuff that you can do. Like I can artwork to come. I can be interviewed whilst jogging, right, to show what a strong leader I am. Blah blah blah. So you could argue that we could have like a media thing where you talk up the economy, whatever, and we could do that. But where's the kind of like where's the downside, I guess? Because all of these things are supposed to be interesting decisions. Okay, so for example, sometimes this goes wrong. I'm going to do judo with special forces, and that worked. Okay, because I am Vladimir Putin. If I try and be trustworthy, I'll eat breakfast in. Oh, we got an error there. That's yeah, that's bug. Yeah, cafe. They put like a little accent thing on it, haven't they? So eat breakfast with ordinary working people. Okay, that worked. How annoying. Something will go wrong. I'll give speech in church after shooting. That could go badly. Oh, this is... Right, hang on. Something will go wrong. Let's visit a flood. Yeah, okay, so I visit a flood. I get in the way. I'm actually not helping, and everyone says this is your fault and yells at me and throws buckets of flood water at me. Okay, so there's a risk, right? What I'm saying is, when it comes to business confidence, what can you really do? There's nothing you can do, really, except talk about it. So there are some policies, but they're very obscure. So what would we do? What would we have? We'd have a policy where you, as Prime Minister, use up some of your precious political capital, which I've used all on media events. So you'd use all that up to sort of go, hey, isn't the economy great, team? That's almost certainly not going to go wrong. So it's not interesting. And if that's the only way we affect it, then we use up some of this screen space on modelling something that we hardly affect. That would be bad. Even veganism has multiple inputs and a few, and we haven't finished. We've only just started with the kind of modelling of stuff like that. So anyway, so that's why business confidence isn't in, even though I think it's important. Anyway, I could be argued out of all of this. You could say to me, no, Cliff, the game is awful unless you model the Senate and model women as a different group, and you model population growth and business confidence and interest rates and private debt. I'm willing to be persuaded that they're all important things, because I am a middle-aged, middle-class, white English guy who has a certain background, and therefore what I think is important probably isn't as important. If you've never heard me speak or tweet or talk about anything, you might be able to guess from the game that I am into the environment as an issue. There's a lot of stuff in there. Energy efficient. Most people wouldn't model energy efficiency as a big deal. I think it is a big deal. But that's my own biases. So tell me if I'm wrong. Also, we do not have people's sexuality in there as a voter group. We have a lot of dilemmas that come up, but again, they are on the liberal conservative spectrum in terms of their effects, because I thought that was the best way to do it. Could be argued out of anything, I guess. Anyway, this is a rundown of what isn't in currently in Democracy 4. I'm anti-selling it. If you want this, we don't have it. Buy something else. Anyway, this is Democracy 4. It's not even in alpha, let alone early access yet. And there's loads of stuff to go in it, and it crashes now and then at the moment, like that. Boom. I didn't actually expect it to crash immediately. I was expecting to confidently continue. Anyway, I'll have lots more interesting stuff to show off next week. Please like and subscribe, blah blah blah. Thank you for watching, and see you next week.